Discover the inspiring recovery of a snow leopard, a hidden fight for humanity's soul. Jake stood on the jagged cliffs of the Colorado Rockies, his breath visible in the crisp mountain air. The landscape shimmered under the morning sun, its beauty an urgent reminder of what he had devoted his life to protect. Years of studying the elusive snow leopard had led him to this moment, yet uncertainty gnawed at his insides. A failed marriage, an unexpected layoff from his research lab, and the heavy burden of his late father's legacy echoed ominously in his mind. What had once felt purposeful now weighed like a stone around his neck. Who was he now? A man committed to nature's protection, or merely a ghost of ambition wandering the mountains? Returning to his hometown was meant to be a fresh start, the scent of pine and whispers of distant winds promising solace. But as soon as he stepped back into this community, the warm greetings felt hollow. To his neighbors, he was an outsider, absent during their struggles, now back only when it suited him. Desperation gripped him tightly, pushing him toward a mission that seemed to pulse with potential, to rehabilitate a snow leopard cub. It felt like a chance to redeem himself for all that he lost. Yet with every step he took toward the animal's recovery, the stakes climbed higher, intertwining his personal demons with the fate of a fragile species. It wasn't long before his quest devolved into treacherous waters. Whispers of poachers lurking in the shadows emerged from the community's lips, blending fear with resentment. If he exposed the network destroying the snow leopards, it might endanger the one thing he longed to protect, the very families that had once called him a friend. The realization settled like a dark cloud over him. His ambition could shatter the delicate balance between ecological preservation and community survival. Did achieving personal acclaim justify the risk to those who remained? Jake dug deeper into his investigation, uncovering information he believed could save both the cub and the wildcats in peril. Yet, just as hope began to blossom, betrayal struck. Someone on his team had shared their findings with those involved in the poaching. Anxiety twisted within him, unleashing feelings of despair he thought he had long fought off. His vision blurred as he recalled his father's voice, the man who had devoted his life to conservation, whispering the very principles Jake found himself clashing against. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With the stakes rising and desperation gnawing at him, Jake crossed paths with an elder native guide. Beneath the shadows of the jagged peaks, this unexpected mentor shared wisdom woven into the very fabric of nature. The interconnectedness of all living things resonated deeply, urging Jake to confront the dual identity he carried, scientist and human. The tension inside him flared, forcing him to grapple with the agony of choice. Would he chase the accolades, blinding him to the community's plight? Or would he honor his father's legacy by protecting both the snow leopards and the people forever intertwined in this rugged terrain? Standing at that precipice, the dawn breaking across the peaks, Jake felt the weight of his fragmented past pressing down like an avalanche. He had to confront the darkness brewing in the mountains and decide who he truly was. Commitment hovered in the air like an unpicked fruit, a promise yet to be fulfilled. As darkness pooled below him, and the threat of poachers loomed larger, his heart raced with the urgency of choice. Would he yield to the desperation for validation, or would he reclaim his spirit in defense of those he once called family? Jake lingered on that jagged cliff, the crisp air biting against his skin, but what tingled most was the stir of determination rising within him. The elder's words echoed in his mind, the intricate web of life weaving his existence with both the snow leopards and the community below. With each breath, clarity began to surface amidst the chaos. Would he stand idly by while the shadows crept closer, or would he confront the besieging darkness? Descending from the heights demanded more than just physical effort. It required a commitment to work through the looming obstacles. He shuffled down the path that led to the trailhead, feeling the weight of the decision bearing down on him. As he made his way, vivid images flooded his mind. The cub, vulnerable and innocent, facing perils he had only begun to comprehend. His heart raced, the urgency inside propelling him forward with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Reaching the base of the cliffs, he encountered the familiar surroundings of his childhood. The rustic buildings stood solemnly, each corner alive with memories yet suffocated by the tensions that had grown during his absence. Jake pushed through the knots tightening in his stomach as he approached the town's community center, a place he once knew so well, but now felt like a stranger to. Conversations buzzed within the confines, mixed with muffled laughter and palpable unease. As he entered, heads turned, and whispers began, uncertainty lurking just behind the smiles. Jake squared his shoulders, steeling himself against the judgment he felt brewing. They spoke as if he were still that ambitious scientist who left his home behind, now returning only when it suited his needs. Their perceptions clawed at him, each glance an accusation that exposed the truth. He had abandoned them. Adapting to this scrutiny would require more than regaining their trust. It demanded vulnerability. His heart thudded painfully as he approached the gathering, thoughts colliding as he considered the implications of what he needed to say. Silence followed as he called for attention, the murmuring gradually ceasing. The faces he had known since childhood mirrored a variety of sentiments: curiosity, skepticism, and lingering resentment. Taking a deep breath, he fueled his words with the urgency of the situation unfolding nearby. "I'm here because I want to help. Both the snow leopards and all of you. I know my return seems self-serving, but I didn't come back just to try to redeem myself. There are poachers creating danger for our animals and for our families. We must face them together." Muffled gasps punctuated the room, meeting Jake's eyes with a mix of disbelief and cautious hope. He craved the solidarity of his neighbors, yet the wall of mistrust remained daunting. "I want to collaborate with you," he implored. "We can protect what we love without sacrificing one for the other." A surge of determination rushed through him, confronting the delicate balance between the interests of the community and the preservation of endangered species, was a battle he was ready to fight, if they were willing to join him. What revealed itself was not just a plea for partnership, but the emergence of the leader he had long kept hidden beneath layers of doubt and sorrow. But as the town's leader finally spoke, her voice cutting the heavy silence, Jake sensed the impending clash. "You left, Jake. Why should we trust you again? How do we know you won't choose accolades over our safety?" The heavy truth of her words shook him. Trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight. It took intentional actions and sacrifice. The weight shifted as he faced the stakes again, not just for his journey, but for a collaboration that could define their future. Determined, Jake lifted his chin, ready to harness the intense fire igniting within him. "I'll do everything necessary to protect both our community and the leopards. You can hold me accountable." As murmurs erupted around him, some encouraging while others skeptical, he knew the time had come to face his dual identity head-on. Despite the growing uncertainty, a spark ignited within him as he prepared for confrontation, with both the poachers stalking the landscape and the doubt lingering in the hearts of his neighbors. Yet reality loomed closer, and as voices rose around him, Jake felt the imminent weight of a decision pressing down, a decision that could shatter everything he was building. Would he navigate the darkness that threatened both the animals he cherished and the humanity he sought to reconnect with, or would fear hold him captive? The answer danced just out of reach, beckoning for urgency and resolve, as Jake forged ahead into the storm. Jake stood in the midst of their skepticism, his heart beating loudly in his chest as he prepared for the storm ahead. The expectation in the room hung palpably, urging him to find the right words that would pierce through the layers of doubt and resentment. Every face before him told a story of betrayal, and as he scanned the crowd, he saw Jim, his childhood friend, whose gaze was wrought with disappointment. Jake's resolve wavered for a flicker of a moment. Would they truly give him a chance to lead this fight? He inhaled deeply, forcing the tumult of emotions back. "I know it's going to take time to regain your trust. I've spent years chasing my dreams, leaving this place behind. But now I realize that part of me was misplaced. The leopards, They represent a part of our heritage and our future. Jake felt a subtle shift in the air. Perhaps it was the weight of his honesty, or maybe the familiar threads of shared history binding him to this place began to gently weave again. But as the leader's piercing eyes held him, he felt the flicker of hope. It was fragile but alive. "Every one of you," he continued, "has more power than you know. The way you know this land, the stories you carry, they can be our greatest asset in this fight. I can't do this alone." Each word became more powerful as he felt the invisible threads of connection test and stretch, searching for a reason to bring them back together. Then came a voice from the back, a voice he recognized immediately as Jim's, cutting through the mounting tension. "If you want us to trust you, we need to see action, Jake. Words won't change the past or our future. What is your plan?" A challenge, stark and unwavering. Yet inside, Jake surged. This question was the spark lighting the path ahead. "You're right. We need to act fast. I've been gathering data on poaching patterns. We can implement monitoring systems to track their movements and protect the leopard's territories, while also looking out for our community. I've come up with a strategy that combines both sides' interests." As he began to outline his plan, ranging from community-led initiatives to wildlife fencing, he filled each point with urgency and clarity, each word revealing more of his hidden capabilities. The room shifted. Those skeptical faces began to contemplate the possibilities. Could they really work together? But as Jake gained momentum, his pulse quickened. He faced the reality of his plan. The community's response would shape everything. "If we do this, we need scouts from your families. We need to set up meetings to share information, to work in tandem, not only for the leopard's safety but for the security of our livelihoods as well." Some nods of agreement began to emerge, tentative and explorative. Hope glimmered, trembling at the edges, as he continued to unfold the consequences of inaction versus the potential glory of collaboration. Yet doubt whispered within him. Was this just a fleeting moment of optimism amidst the overwhelming darkness? As he looked into the eyes of his neighbors, something clicked. Amidst their fears, Jake could see glimpses of curiosity and a yearning for change. The path was still daunting, bathed in uncertainty and questions of his past decisions. But then he realized, this was his moment to confront not only the poachers but himself. The scars of abandonment didn't meet him at every corner. They could fuel his compassion, develop his strategies, and become the stories of redemption he needed to forge his path. A rising wave of courage flooded him. He wouldn't only lead out of obligation, he needed to lead out of conviction. He had to reclaim the trust he had lost, now. The conversations reframed with possibility, engaging voices asking questions, emerging stories of how their deep understanding of the land could shape the future. Hope surged within him like an unbridled current, yet with each step forward, a sinking awareness emerged. The poachers awaited, watching their every move, ready to strike at the weakest moment. As he closed his eyes for a brief moment, he felt the intensity of the quest ahead. Would alliances form tight enough to stand against the encroaching danger, or would fear drive him from the one path worth fighting for again? The next step beckoned him forward. A confrontation with the poachers was inevitably coming. But would he be ready to defend everything he now stood for when the time arrived? The days passed with a palpable intensity as Jake shifted his focus away from speeches and motivational words. He realized that trust could not merely be reconstructed through rhetoric, it demanded tangible actions. He devoted his mornings to coordinating with local families, gathering insights that could be woven into a tighter net of protection for the leopards. Each family had their own connection to the land, and their tales of past hardships and successes told him what was essential, what kind of wolf he could be in this fight. Jake spent long evenings at the local community hall, integrating the wisdom shared by others while using modern tactics he'd learned elsewhere. There was something invigorating about seeing pieces of information previously overlooked, now reigniting methods of interdependence, and spectral orange lights splashed along the walls became a backdrop to their discussions. Ideas transformed into action. Each meeting felt like an experiment in community building, as they mapped out territories and formulated reconnaissance plans. Yet with every success, Jake discovered something unsettling about himself. Despite his growing connections, an undercurrent of guilt festered deep within. The fear of abandoning this place again loomed large when he thought of his past. How easily he had distanced himself before. This memory lurked, and Jake had to confront the specter of his prior choices. Did he possess the grit to face the harsh reality of potentially failing them once more? One evening, while reviewing the area's poaching reports, he felt eyes on him. It was Jim, standing at the door with an expression that blended skepticism and curiosity. "How's all this planning working out in the real world?" Jim asked, challenging yet vulnerable. Jake's heart raced as he realized this was not simply a question about logistics. It was a deeper inquiry into his resolve. "It's coming together. Families are starting to sign on the scouting part," he replied, hoping his confidence reverberated through the room. "That's a step, but we need more than a handful of scouts. We need strategic moves. What's our game plan for when the poachers come? When will you make your move?" Jim's question was like a knife, cutting through Jake's growing confidence, exposing the yawning gap between intentions and actions. This encounter thrust Jake into reflection. As Jim walked away, his words echoed painfully, a reminder that while he was rallying support, he hadn't yet devised the ultimate confrontation plan. The remaining days before the impending threat deepened his unease. Anxiety gnawed at him, the reality of his immaturity in this huge task creeping back into view. Sitting alone under the vast expanse of a starlit sky, Jake contemplated the tangible world around him, a delicate balance of nature and their fragile livelihoods. He struggled with his imminent decisions, realizing that confronting the poachers wouldn't be purely strategic. It would require him to dig into the vulnerability he had shunned for years. With resolve, he decided it was time to blend the collective knowledge of the community and his need for personal redemption into a cohesive plan. They had a fight ahead that would demand a shared sense of bravery. Glimpses of the potential union between the community's rich history and his sporadic insights began to crystallize. He envisioned a rally, a confrontation full of courage, tethered to the wisdom of local stories, blending their familial bonds with the threat posed by the outsiders. But as light dawned on his newfound clarity, a deeper fear emerged. Was he capable of facing the wrath of the poachers? Would his moment of truth open wounds not just for him, but for everyone he had drawn back into this battle? The urgency to prepare battled against the realities of his growing responsibilities. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown. The moment was fast approaching when he would have to choose to leap over self-doubt or be consumed by it. Jake closed his eyes and drew a deep breath. The answer coursed through him. He needed to confront everything, including himself. Would the wisdom of the land, the stories of its people, and the fierce spirit within him be enough to stand together against the poachers? As dawn began to break, Jake felt the weight of the moment settling around him, the air thick with expectation. It was clear. The time had come for a reckoning. Jake awoke to the sounds of the forest, the morning light glimmering through the branches, illuminating a pathway strewn with fallen leaves. The weight of the impending confrontation throbbed in his chest. He had examined the community's history, drawn strength from their legends, and yet felt a gathering storm inside himself. Doubt seeped through the cracks of his resolve like a shadow creeping up the walls. He needed a plan, one that firmly held at its core the spirit of the families depended on him. He walked to the edge of the forest, seeking the solitude it offered. In that quiet space, he began to piece together a strategy. Each tactical move would require precision instead of grand gestures, a dance rather than a brawl. The jagged ridges, the known paths frequented by poachers, and the hideouts already scouted by local families were steps in this elaborate game of survival. Yet it would all hinge on one thing: trust. Trust. The word echoed in his mind as he recalled conversations he'd held with different families. Each insignia of loyalty they had extended was a thread, either nurturing the connection between them or threatening to snap at moments of trepidation. He had seen their eyes light up when he shared plans, but now their trust had become a burden, a collective hope resting on his shoulders. Jake blinked quickly, shaking away thoughts that clouded his purpose. The poachers had already made moves to infiltrate the territory, with whispers of their presence circulating through the elders. Every moment wasted heightened the risk not just to the leopards, but also to the families he had grown to respect. He could not let fear sow discord now. The urgency pressed on him as he hurriedly sketched out his strategy against a backdrop of rising sun and dew-kissed earth. He mapped communication patterns for scouts, devised a code to alert everyone if danger loomed, and established safe houses where families could gather under the different sky when the moment arose. Each stroke of his pencil reflected not just tactics, but unbreakable interdependence. But beyond the mechanics of organizing the defense, there lay the daunting challenge of evoking courage among the villagers, a courage Jake found flickering within himself. What if they faltered when faced with real danger? Would they look to him as their leader, or would his past choices, his past fears, ripple through their resolve like a cold wind? Determined, he sought out Jim, wanting to preemptively confront any lingering skepticism. They found themselves standing together on the hillside, gazing at the stretch of land that stretched below them like an open book. "We need to do this. I need every person involved," Jake stated, his voice steady, but his heart thundering with vulnerability. Jim's gaze was piercing, assessing. "And if it all falls apart? What then, Jake?" The question struck at Jake's core. He inhaled deeply, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath him. "Then I'll take responsibility. I'll own it. They deserve that much. I just need to know we can warn each other." Jim considered him. A beat passing. "Let's get moving then. We still have time to gather everyone." Together they forged their way, catalyzing a chain of conversations that would test Jake's personal growth and resolve. As they reached the hamlet, whispers of anticipation fluttered among neighbors. Old tales of courage and unity began to resurrect in jest and seriousness alike. Jake felt an ember of strength igniting within him, one he hadn't known existed. For every family that joined in, the weight of his past choices began to feel lighter. He had nothing to lose by placing himself in the hands of those he had almost abandoned. With each discussion, he felt his earlier self-doubt physically retreat, replaced by a burgeoning belief in their combined power. Jake realized he had not merely been reconstructing trust. He was building a resilience to face impending threats, not just as a leader, but as a trusted ally. It was then that he looked up and caught Jim's eye, an unspoken understanding passing between them. They would face the poachers together, armed with the secrets of the land and the stories that bound them. The day stretched ahead, fraught with uncertainty, yet illuminated by the possibilities of courage. Jake felt the pulse of readiness swell within him, but just as confidence surged, a distant sound echoed, an ominous rustling between the trees. The moment of truth was drawing closer. Jake took a deep breath, his next decision arriving with the weight of inevitability. Would he step forth once more, not just as a voice of hope but a beacon in dark waters? The hours ahead would reveal whether he could truly rise to embody the change they all sought. Jake's heart raced as the rustling grew louder, stirring the underbrush with an unsettling urgency. He and Jim exchanged worried glances, but Jake felt a flicker of resolve rooting him to the spot. This confrontation was more than a tactical encounter. It was a crucible for his own evolution. He suddenly realized that courage wasn't merely acting without fear, but confronting the shadows that lingered in his mind. What had he always done in times of uncertainty? He'd hidden behind distractions, retreating to the safety of his past. But now, this moment demanded action, demanded he address his inner turmoil head-on. Taking a step forward, Jake led Jim deeper into the woods. Adrenaline tinged the air, amplifying every sound, the wind rustling through leaves, the distant caws of startled birds. He focused on the map he had sketched earlier, the lines and paths symbolic of the strategies taking shape within him. "Is this really the right call?" Jim's voice broke through the rustling chaos. The doubt in Jim's tone was a mirror to Jake's own apprehensions. What if they weren't strong enough? What if the families faltered? Jake stopped, grasping the weight of this pivotal moment. "Jim, I can't entertain those thoughts right now. I have to believe we're on the right path. If we don't try, we'll have lost more than this land. We'll lose the chance to redefine everything. His words surprised them both. The surge of conviction was unfamiliar yet exhilarating. Jake wondered, could this be the awakening he needed? One step toward bravery removed the haze of uncertainty, transforming it into a single focus: their mission. In silence, they pressed further, finally spotting the gathering place near a clearing, illuminated by slants of soft sunlight filtering through the canopy. The others were already arriving, the families stepping boldly into the light. Jake noticed the glimmer of hope and determination materialize in their eyes. It sparked a realization. Their trust in him ignited something within himself he had long buried. As he took center stage, Jake could feel the collective energy in the air, a seed of unity sown from personal histories, hardened by the threat that loomed over them. His voice, though nervous, carried a steady pitch. We stand together. This will not just be about defending our home. It will be about reclaiming what we thought we had lost. Each of you, every story matters. Their faces softened with understanding, a wave of solidarity washing over the group. He felt their courage ripple around him, gradually molding into an unbreakable shield. This was not merely about the poachers. Jake was uncovering the depth of his own resilience, his hidden capacities as a motivator and a leader. Yet as hope began to flourish, so did the dread encroaching on the periphery. Jake felt the air thicken with the silence that preceded turmoil. A sense of foreboding crept back in. What if they couldn't achieve what they set out to do? Suddenly, a shout erupted from the edge of the clearing, the urgency breaking the fragile energy. "They're coming!" one of the scouts called, breathless and wild-eyed. A palpable panic surged through the crowd, tipping Jake's earlier courage into uncertainty. Was he truly equipped to lead them through this storm? Doubt threatened to consume his newfound clarity, but just as fear began to cloud his judgment, he recalled the vulnerable determination he had felt moments ago. He had promised to own his responsibilities, to honor the trust placed in him. "This is it," he called out, grounding his voice with strength. "We stand here not just in defense of our home, but in defense of one another. We've prepared for this, and we're ready to face it together." The ringing conviction in his words unshackled the burden of doubt, sparking a brave initiative in the faces around him. The encroaching peril materialized, but so did the sense of readiness. As he scanned the faces of those around him, Jake transformed fear into purpose. But beneath that resolve simmered questions he hadn't fully acknowledged. Would they truly hold firm against the forces threatening their lives? With resolve tightening his chest, Jake heard the distant thuds drawing closer, a foreboding reminder of the reality upon them. The moment of truth was rapidly approaching. Would he step up and lead them into battle, or would he falter when they needed him the most? The ground beneath him felt alive, each pulse mirroring the chaos swirling in the air as everything began to unfold. Jake's pulse quickened, his senses sharpening as he braced himself for what lay ahead. The thuds echoed like a heartbeat, amplifying the tension in the clearing. He sensed the families around him solidify their stance, their expressions highlighting a blend of fear and determination. They were all caught in this moment together, relying on whatever Jake had to offer. With a deep breath, he recalled the map etched into his mind, not just of the paths winding through the woods, but of the potential strategies at his disposal. It was time to implement those ideas into action. "Jim, gather everyone and push back to that ridge on the left side," he instructed, nodding toward the more defensible terrain. "We can create barriers there. Give ourselves some time." Jim's face transformed from worry to purpose as he nodded and moved to rally the group. This decisive moment brought clarity to Jake's mission. He was not just a passive participant in this turmoil, but a leader. Each step he took was laden with the weight of their expectations and his own transformative journey. As the families moved into position, Jake's mind raced with tactics. They needed not just courage, but strategy. He found himself pacing, the adrenaline steering his thoughts as he formulated a plan, recalling the old survival skills from his youth. A makeshift barricade of fallen branches would delay their adversaries. "Look for anything we can use to slow them down," he shouted, energizing the crowd. "Every effort counts." The rush of action around him hushed the lingering doubts. He was turning fear into a focused energy that guided them. While assisting others in building the barriers, Jake became increasingly aware of the adrenaline coursing through him. Strength surged, breaking the chains of his past timidity. This was new territory. He was no longer merely responding to life's challenges, but actively reshaping the narrative. It was exhilarating. Every latch, every knot they secured mirrored a new detachment from his old self. As he worked, he reflected on the importance of everyone's contributions, their hands working tirelessly alongside his. In this struggle, he was discovering not just the power of leadership, but also the richness of collaboration, an empowering revelation. The sound of footsteps intensified, ominous softness breaking the silence. Panic threatened to spiral within him, but Jake clung to his resolve. They were prepared. The moment of reckoning was a test not merely of their strength against an outside force, but of Jake's evolving identity as a leader. "Stand firm," he urged as he surveyed their makeshift barrier. "Remember why we're here. This is our land, our lives." His voice pealed through the air, calling on the strength of those words. Was he truly embodying the conviction he had expressed earlier? Then, like a wave crashing on a shore, the poachers emerged from the underbrush, silhouettes against the dimming light, instruments of chaos ready to invade the sanctuary they had built. Fear slithered back into his thoughts, but a deeper determination rooted him. He would face this challenge head-on, rooted in a newfound strength that had burgeoned within him. But as the confrontation loomed, a startling realization gripped him. The threat was more than just the poachers. What if this battle uncovered even darker truths about himself, ones he had hidden away until now? The ground beneath them began to shake, and Jake felt the tremor not just in the earth but in his foundation. Would this clash reveal his capacities or expose his weaknesses? The moments that lay ahead beckoned a reckoning he wasn't sure he was prepared for, yet he knew he had to confront it. "Get ready," Jake barked, adrenaline igniting every fiber of his being. As the figures advanced, the distance closing, Jake stood at the precipice of bravery and fear, grappling with the duality of his transformation. Would this moment fortify his resolve, or shatter the fragile stability he had just forged? With the approaching figures casting long shadows over the clearing, Jake's gaze intensified. He sensed that the hardest decisions awaited him, and the true test of his courage had only just begun. As the poachers moved closer, Jake's instincts kicked in, propelling him to analyze their formation. Each haired figure carried a silhouette of menace, and he felt the weight of the situation pressing down like the heavy air just before a storm. His breath steadied, a calming counter to the chaos. "We can't let them divide us," he muttered, half-heartedly convincing himself as much as the families behind him. They had transformed a patch of wilderness into a makeshift fortress, but its fragility was evident. In this glaring moment of danger, Jake grasped his new dual role, not just as a leader, but as a protector. His mind flicked through the possibilities, weighing options as they emerged, and he plotted a path through uncertainty. His fingers tightened around a fallen branch, its weight reassuring against injected apprehension. This was not merely a physical confrontation. It was a contest of wills, and he intended to stand firm. The poachers advanced with purpose, their eyes glinting, hungry for the spoils of fear. Each step they took resonated with the palpable tension in his chest. A sharp clang of anxiety echoed within him. If they broke through, chaos would reign, unraveling the fragile thread that bound them together. "Prepare yourselves," Jake commanded, his voice resolute yet tinged with the urgency of the unknown. "When the time comes, we fight back." The words felt heavy on his tongue, a promise forged in the crucible of survival. Within him, a flicker ignited. Courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the determination to forge on in its face. He reflected, realizing the evolving strength was no longer just a choice, but a necessity. And in that realization, he uncovered another layer of resourcefulness. Turning to the families behind him, Jake sought engagement. "Anyone with experience hunting or tracking, grab stones, anything you can throw, gather the sharpest branches. We'll use our surroundings." The collective murmur of compliance was emboldening, reinforcing his resolve as they scurried, ignited by adrenaline and purpose. With every moment that passed, Jake felt himself drawing deeper into leadership, rooting for collective strength with every coordinated action. As they armed themselves, he engaged with each person's face, finding distinct determination in their collective breaths. It was in his vulnerability that he could inspire. He understood he was not alone in this fight. Mind-whirring, Jake strategized a defense, channeling that youthful survival training. It was about more than physical tethering. He began to weave together a plan that capitalized on the environment around them. Shifting Neolithic rocks strategically could create obstacles. Creating noise could disorient. On my signal, release everything you have. Don't aim for accuracy. Aim for distraction. His heart thudded with excitement, a dangerous thrill of leading and performing action that struck at the heart of fear itself. Just as he steadied his resolve, a flash of movement caught his attention. A poacher had cornered one of the younger children, gesturing toward the barricade with predatory intent. In that instant, a visceral rage combined with the full force of his new identity burgeoned within him. Without thinking, Jake advanced, fueled by determination, his hand gripping tightly onto the branch as if it were an extension of his own will. "Hey, leave them alone!" The shout erupted from deep within his chest, harsh and primal. In that bold move toward confrontation, Jake discovered a profound depth to his newfound leadership, a fierce protective nature he'd only glimpsed before. But as he bore down on the approaching threat, doubt churned in the pit of his stomach. Was he truly ready to unleash the untapped determination within him, or would this gamble expose the very weaknesses he sought to hide? As he prepared to take the fight to the poachers, one thought surged ahead of the rest. This battle was not solely for their lives. It was a fight to uncover the depths of his own potential. Would this confrontation reshape him into the leader they needed, or would the unforgiving darkness consume him whole? Jake lunged forward, the branch gripped tight in his hand, a makeshift weapon that swayed dangerously with his urgency. The poacher turned, surprise flickering across his face before a sneer replaced it, revealing the jagged edge of his intentions. The sheer murderous aura emanating from the man compelled Jake to question his own resolve, yet he pushed that doubt aside. This confrontation wasn't just sparked by anger. It stemmed from an urgent instinct to protect those he had come to care for. Adrenaline surged through him, igniting a fire that he didn't know he had. As he charged, a metamorphosis unfurled within him, his past insecurities dissolving into the raw, intense focus of the moment. "Get back!" he shouted, fully aware of the consequences of his actions, hoping to draw the poacher's attention away from the child. The poacher's expression twisted from surprise to anger, and that shift fueled Jake's determination. In that heartbeat, he discerned a vital truth. Leadership often meant standing against the tide, confronting the uncertainty while navigating through others' fears. He felt the weight of every pair of eyes on him, searching for reassurance. The poacher glanced over his shoulder, momentarily distracted, and Jake seized the fleeting opportunity. He swung the branch with all his might, connecting with the man's shoulder. A satisfying crack resounded, followed by a howl of pain. For a moment, time slowed. The world narrowed to that singular act of defiance. But the encouraging shift was fleeting. The poacher retaliated with swift, brutal efficiency. But Jake had already reflexively ducked. As he did, a wild thought raced through his mind. What would happen if he channeled this energy strategically rather than impulsively? Instinctively, he strategized. Could this confrontation serve a greater purpose? As he rolled away from the stunned poacher, he scanned the faces behind him. He could see the families were frozen, the fear palpable, but he needed to rally them once more. "Everyone, we have to act together. Use the rocks and branches." Jake's voice rang out, commanding and fierce, igniting flickers of bravery in the eyes around him. Jake's attention snapped back to the poacher at that moment, who was regaining his balance and clutching his shoulder, the anger smoldering as he turned his wrath back toward Jake. The poacher lunged forward, but Jake had anticipated it, moving to the side and expertly dodging the man's grasp. Inspiration coursed through him. His abilities were emerging under pressure. "Distraction! Now!" he yelled, positioning himself strategically, hoping to draw other poachers in. As if synchronized, stones rained from above as families threw whatever they could find, creating a cacophony that echoed through the trees. The distraction worked. Some poachers turned their attention, grappling with the confusion. In those chaotic seconds, Jake grasped the true essence of leadership. It required more than physical strength. It demanded vision and the fortitude to inspire others to act. Each action fueled his growth, with each supportive shout from behind lending him authority. He felt the realization grow within him. He was not just fighting for survival, but also evolving, stepping forward into his role as a leader and protector. Yet as he faced the advancing poachers, he recognized the grit of the battle was far from over. The poachers reassembled, snarling with vengeance, and Jake sensed the shifting tides of the confrontation. Anxiety twisted in his gut. Was he ready for the unfolding storm, or were deeper challenges lurking beyond immediate threats? With a steely focus, he prepared to engage once more, but a new question pulled at the edges of his resolve. Could he truly lead them through a battle that tested not just their strength, but their very spirits, and his own? As he found himself preparing for the next wave of conflict, one thought pierced through the din like a bolt of lightning. The real battle lay ahead, and it threatened to push him further than he had ever imagined. Would he be able to rise to the occasion and protect those who depended on him, or would he falter under the weight of untested leadership? Jake's heart thundered in his chest as he prepared for the next wave of confrontation. The chaotic presence of the poachers had transformed the clearing into a battleground, but amidst the chaos, clarity emerged. This was not only a fight for survival, it was a defining moment for himself and the community he had once given up. He felt a cohesive energy blooming among the families gathered behind him, their doubts eclipsed by instinctive determination. Every glance exchanged held a whisper of resilience, a promise woven from shared history and mutual survival. They were there, willing not just to protect their homes, but to reclaim their identities as stewards of the land. "Now!" he shouted. The command resonated like a battle cry, igniting a spark of collective courage. As the families rallied together, Jake capitalized on their synergy. He directed the group to form a defensive line, leveraging their knowledge of the terrain. Every rock, every dip, and every shadow became an ally in their fight. With each determined step, Jake felt himself morph into the leader he had long sought to embody. And yet, as he guided the families, doubts whispered in his mind. Could he truly navigate the precarious dance between courage and fear? Would he falter when they needed him most? The poachers surged forward, and Jake met their advance head-on, bolstered by the families at his back. He threw himself into the fray, every swing of the branch a demonstration of his newfound resolve. In this moment, he was confronted with the ferocity of his own spirit. A fierce desire not just to survive, but to thrive as an advocate for both the snow leopards and the families he cherished. Yet as the clash escalated, an urgency flickered inside him. Time was of the essence. The real threat loomed beyond the immediate chaos. The poachers had entered their territory with a ruthless intent, and Jake knew that to secure their future, they needed a definitive victory. It became clear. His actions were more than instinctual. They were transformative, both for himself and for those around him. "Jim, flank left," he yelled, driving momentum with precise commands, reminding himself not just to move forward, but to integrate their shared strengths into a cohesive effort. "We fight for each other, for the snow leopards, and for everything we've built together." The families responded, rallying, drawing strength from one another as Jake noticed a wave of trust invigorating the air around them. In that pressed moment, he realized their fates intertwined. None would falter while the others stood firm. They were not just protecting land or animals. They were guardians of each other's stories, their survival tightly woven into a tapestry of shared history. As the confrontation surged and receded, a thought crystallized within Jake. Leadership was about serving a purpose greater than oneself. A burgeoning understanding settled in his chest. It was about aligning individual growth with collective strength. And now, amidst the urgency of battle, he was standing as both a guide and an equal, rooted firmly in the mission entrusted to him. But the reality of combat was unpredictable, shifting faster than he ever could have anticipated. One of the poachers broke from the pack and charged straight at Jake, rage fueling the man's intent. The air thickened, and adrenaline sharpened Jake's reflexes. He dodged, narrowing, escaping a violent confrontation, before countering swiftly. But suddenly, that primal urge to protect the community surged within him, igniting a different flame, one that was unwavering. "Keep fighting," he cried, his voice ringing with conviction. "We are not just defenders, we are champions of our land and ourselves." The poacher's face twisted into an expression of disbelief as he stumbled back, realizing that they were not alone, but standing as a collective force forged in the flames of their loyalty to each other. As the fight swirled around them, a profound truth unfurled before Jake's eyes. They were reclaiming their home and, in the process, re-establishing their legacy. By the time the skirmish reached its apex, both sides stood breathless, a standoff defined by tension and resolve. Jake gasped for air, heart racing as he surveyed those around him. They had confronted the poachers, but they were also confronting their fears, regaining agency that had been lost for too long. Then, as if captured in slow motion, among the scattered remnants of chaos, Jake saw a figure at the edge of the clearing, the elder native guide, who had once whispered wisdom into his soul during seasons of self-doubt. The guide raised an arm, the motion an invitation to cease hostilities, gathering the feuding factions in the echo of clarity. "Enough." The elder's voice resonated through the silent pause, a palpable weight tethered to the collective experience. The tension fell away, replaced by an almost magnetic pull toward understanding. Jake felt the horizon of change shift like a light breaking through clouds. It was in that moment of grounding clarity. He had begun not just to reclaim trust, but to build a foundation for a future filled with collaboration, respect, and healing. The family stepped closer, every heartbeat an affirmation of purpose. The realization washed over Jake. He was ready to embrace his father's legacy and fulfill the promise he had made to protect both the snow leopards and the community. He was no longer a ghost wandering the mountains, but a leading force charged with purpose. With renewed vigor, Jake turned to his neighbors with a steady strength reflected in their eyes. "We stand united," he declared. "As we protect our home today, we will fight for our tomorrow. Together." As he joined his neighbors in a triumphant release of shared tension, echoes of courage rippled through the community. Jake understood he had not only faced the poachers, but had confronted himself, shattering the ghosts of insecurity that had once burdened him. In the spirit of overcoming, that was his singular achievement. As the dust settled, he stood firm amongst allies newly forged, his identity redefined. The future gleamed brightly ahead, not just for him, but for every family, every snow leopard, and the legacy they would nurture together. This climactic battle had rekindled a deeper sense of belonging, affirming his place among the mountains and the community. Jake held not just the title of protector, but embraced the calling of a true leader, committed to championing life in all its forms. As the quiet descended over the field, Jake took a deep breath. His purpose was clearer than ever. With that clarity, his senses attuned to the beauty that surrounded him, he disappeared into the embrace of the mountains, ready to forge ahead into the expansive journey that awaited. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow on the landscape, he felt anticipation brewing, each step forward beckoning him to explore new horizons. Now this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to the channel and not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep the content flowing. Comment below your reactions and theories about this powerful ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.